unsure whether President Duterte is open to accepting a drug czar position in the next administration. Marcos is expected to announce more cabinet nominees in the following days. As for the inauguration of the president-elect, the Marcos camp said they were still in the process of making crucial decisions. Earlier in the day, ambassadors from the European Union, United Kingdom, France, and Singapore paid a courtesy visit to the president-elect and discussed plans to further strengthen ties with the Philippines. Back to you, Pia.
Yeah, Chrissy, can you tell us more about what the discussions were like in President-elect Marcos's meetings with the ambassadors?
Yes, Pia. The British ambassador first discussed to uphold maritime ties with the Philippines.
We currently have a few British vessels in the region. We will build on that. Our carrier strike group will be back to this part of the world in 2023. And we'll continue to work with all partners interested in maintaining the international maritime law and UNCLOS and the 2016 arbitral award as we move forward in the years to come.
The Singaporean envoy, meanwhile, said Singaporean businesses are keen on seeing reforms for the country to attract investors. The French ambassador, on the other hand, discussed plans to celebrate the Philippines' 75-year relations with France, while the EU ambassador discussed development cooperation, including support for the peace process in Mindanao, as well as trade, disaster prevention, rule of law, good governance, and human rights. Back to Pia.
Chrissy Di Matulak there reporting from the Marcos headquarters in Mandaluyong. The Duterte administration's Build, Build, Build program will stay as a priority of incoming Public Works Secretary Manuel Bonoan. Bonoan says he will prioritize high-impact projects out of the more than 100 unfinished projects of the Duterte administration. He says he will also engage in public-private partnerships.
In these difficult times of financial problems, I think we have to be very selective so that we have the right projects that will rebound actually and have the immediate impact to support our economic recovery. We will continue actually to look into the flooding problems particularly in growth centers, Metro Manila, Davao, Cebu, and other growth centers in the country. And look what immediately we can undertake to mitigate these flooding problems. This is one of the core functions also of the Department of Public Works and Highways. So certainly there have been master plans in the major river basin.
Bonoan was Public Works Undersecretary during the Arroyo and Estrada administrations. He's now President and Chief Executive Officer of SMC Tollways. The outgoing and incoming teams under the Office of the Vice President are now preparing for transition talks. Vice President Leni Robredo has responded to Vice President-elect Sara Duterte's letter requesting for an initial meeting. In a letter, Duterte congratulated Robredo for her achievements as Vice President. She also sought a virtual discussion between their teams on protocols, policies, precedents, and other matters about the office. In response, Robredo also congratulated Duterte on her proclamation as the next Vice President. She said her team is ready to answer questions about the office and take all the necessary steps for a smooth transition. The Duterte administration's security cluster is hoping its successor will continue to prioritize the armed forces modernization. National Defense Public Affairs Chief Arsenio Andolong says the country needs more security assets, particularly for territorial defense. While in social services, officials believe addressing rising cases of teenage pregnancy should be a priority.
Once a child gives birth to a baby, automatically wala siyang trabaho, magkakaroon na naman ng problema kung saan kukunin pagkain. So, ang program na to, and we are really asking the next administration to look into it because this will at least, if we could be able to minimize this problem, then we could cut the cycle of poverty.
Unti-unti na natin lapitan yung tinatawag na credible defense posture natin na kung saan na natin kayang patrolan talaga ang lahat ng dako ng Pilipinas. Halos nandun na tayo pero malayo pa. So yan ang pinaka-importanting programa na nais naming ilapit sa dadating na kalihim.
Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea reveals President Duterte is almost done packing his personal things in Malacanang. Medialdea says Mr. Duterte began packing months ago. So far, the transition teams for the outgoing and incoming administrations have met just once. For now, Medialdea says they're focusing on determining the venue for the inauguration. Medialdea heads the Duterte administration's transition team. Coming up on Newsnight, officials are preparing to repatriate Filipinos from Sri Lanka because of a crippling economic crisis in the South Asian country. Plus, Filipino talent shining bright once again at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
Land Bank has always believed that in this country, we have to dream big.
SMC,
And so we
San
learned
Miguel
to build
Corporation.
something.
Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
RPN DXKT 1071 sa dial sa inyong mga radyo.
Welcome back to Newsnight. Back to our top story. The team of President-elect Bongbong Marcos names more key appointments in his incoming cabinet. Broadcaster Erwin Tulfo will become Social Welfare Secretary. Tulfo vowed to work hard to address the needs of the poor. Tulfo is the younger brother of Senator-elect Raffy Tulfo. The Tourism Department welcomes the appointment of Liloan Cebu Mayor Cristina Frasco as its new secretary. The DOT says it is ready to brief Frasco on some of the agency's COVID recovery programs during the turnover. Bangko Sentral Assistant Governor Amena Pangandaman officially accepts the invitation to become the next Budget and Management Secretary. She pledged to craft responsive policies that will aid the country's pandemic recovery efforts. Other nominations include former Manila Representative Maria Zenaida Angping as Secretary of the Presidential Management Staff or PMS and IT law expert Ivan John Uy as DICT Chief. Senate Majority Leader Mig Zubiri reveals President-elect Bongbong Marcos sought help from him and House Majority Leader Martin Romualdez on crafting a legislative agenda ahead of his first State of the Nation address. Zubiri says the meeting happened during Marcos' proclamation last week.
And we promised, we committed to him. And I told him, boss, maging speaker, maging SP man ako, hindi, tutulong pa rin ako, so I will help.
While Romualdez has emerged to be the next Speaker of the House, it is a tight race at the Senate. Zubiri, Cheese Escudero, and Win Gatchalian are gunning for the top post. Asked if their meeting means he has gained Marcos' endorsement, Zubiri said he does not want to sound presumptuous, but he sees the Senate presidency as a race between him and Cynthia Villar.
Alam mo, since it's a numbers game, grabe yung sniping, yung poaching, yung tawagan in the midnight hour. So, ang importante dyan, what I'm trying to do is trying to get a consensus from all. Eventually, mag-uupo po kami ni Ma'am Cynthia, mag-uusap po kami, and then we will see what is best for the supermajority.
5 appointees of outgoing President Duterte face a possible bypass by the Commission on Appointments, with their confirmation hearings reset yet again. The appointees are COMELEC Chairman Saidamen Pangarungan and Commissioners George Garcia and Amy Neri, Civil Service Commission Chairman Carla Nograles, and Commission on Audit Chairperson Rizalina Hustol. Senate Majority Leader Mig Zubiri floated the idea of giving President-elect Bongbong Marcos a free hand to choose officials of these constitutional bodies.
Many of my colleagues feel that maybe it is, or it should be, the choice of the new president, Madam Chair, particularly in the appointments of these constitutional officers. A position of 7 years, ibig sabihin, this new president, with a mandate of 31 million votes, will not even be able to appoint the head of the COA until even up to the last day of his term.
The Senator Coco Pimentel says each appointee should be considered on a case-to-case basis. The CA received 1 formal complaint each for Garcia and Neri and 3 against Pangarungan. Senator Franklin Drilon says he will ask questions of Neri about her supposed deal involving, allegedly, a drug lord. The committee tackling the nominations will meet again on Wednesday. If there is no action on their appointments, all 5 officials will have to step down on Friday, June 3rd, when the 18th Congress adjourns. COMEX's Commissioner Garcia says he remains hopeful while others refuse to comment for now. In other news, the government is preparing to repatriate hundreds of Filipinos in Sri Lanka, a South Asian country now crippled by an economic crisis. Philippine officials say assistance is underway for their immediate needs and for those planning to come home. Our Tristan Adalo reports.
Hundreds of Filipinos are now starting to feel the impact of the economic crisis in Sri Lanka. Some of them are struggling to make ends meet amid skyrocketing prices of basic commodities.
The situation has sparked daily protests in the island nation as a South Asian country, for the first time in its history, has failed to pay its debts that fall due. The crisis is a combination of decades of financial mismanagement, worsened by allegations of corruption, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the war in Ukraine. Close to 600 Filipinos are working and living in Sri Lanka.
Daily po, mayroon pong nangyayari na protesta. Kaso nga lang, mayroon na pong tirgasan at saka yung pagbubomba po nila ng tubig. Pero malayo po sa aming tinitirhan, sir.
The country is also low on food, fuel, and essential items like medicines, pushing prices of basic goods to an all-time high.
Yung mga ibang rice, yung 100 rupees naging 200 rupees na po siya, sir. So yun. At tapos sa sugar, na 150 naging 300.
Sa mga supermarket po dito is nabubusan yung mga pagkain sa shelves. Tapos din po, yung sa mga gulay naman po, yung store ng gulay, ilan na po yung mga gulay.
The Foreign Affairs Department says it is prepared to bring Filipinos home immediately. The Philippine Consulate in the capital Colombo and the Embassy in Dhaka in Bangladesh are closely monitoring the situation in Sri Lanka. Overseas Workers Welfare Administration Chief Hans Kaklak says the agency is preparing a list of those who want to be repatriated and possible financial assistance to those in need. And in the face of a record high debt because of the pandemic, what are the chances that the Philippines will go the way of Sri Lanka? Think tank Ibon Foundation says the path is highly unlikely for the country. An analyst adds Sri Lanka and the Philippines are on different directions in terms of economic growth.
You add a factor of government mismanagement. So here we can probably take into account the alleged corruption and cronyism by the Rajapaksa administration. All of those things contributed to what is going on in that South Asian country. In terms of the likelihood of that happening in the Philippines, I think the chances are remote.
Analysts say that the strong remittances from OFWs, the revenues from the BPO industry, and foreign investments can prevent a Sri Lanka-like scenario to happen in the Philippines. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
Search and rescue efforts are still underway for 7 fishermen who went missing in Palawan. The Coast Guard says it is working double time with the armed forces to find the fishermen whose boat collided with a cargo vessel off Maracanao Island on Saturday. Coast Guard spokesperson Armand Barillo says they will also check neighboring coasts, while vessels in the area were advised to inform the PCG of possible sightings of the fishermen. Authorities are checking whether the fishing vessel had engine problems. A lawmaker is calling for a probe into the nearly 844 billion pesos worth of losses of the Social Security System, or SSS, last year. Senator Francis Tolentino filed a resolution to find out the financial standing of the insurance agency and whether it could continue providing benefits to its members. SSS President and CEO Michael Regino earlier explained the increase in net loss was because of changes in accounting standards. He said it does not impact the capability to give Social Security benefits. In COVID-19 headlines, the Okta Research Group sees a very slow rise in cases in Metro Manila. The average daily infections in the capital region from May 23 to 29 was 74, slightly up from 72 the week before, while the reproduction number, or the number of people a COVID-19 patient can infect, rose to 1.08 from 1.02%. Okta says it is still too early to determine whether the uptick will stop or continue in the coming weeks. As COVID-19 cases remain manageable, Education Chief Leonor Briones is pushing for full in-person classes next school year, but Briones adds it will still depend on the situation in respective areas. DepEd Undersecretary Diosdado San Antonio says blended learning will remain on the table.
Hinihikayat na natin ang lahat ng paaralan na magsagawa ng face-to-face classes, pero tinitingnan po namin na blended, may face-to-face na mga araw at may araw na papayagan na nasa mga bahay pa rin natututo ang mga bata. Pero hanggat po, pag pinayagan na po tayo ng IATF na ang lahat ng paaralan ay magkaroon ng face-to-face classes, mga ilang araw, bawat linggo, ay iyan na po ay isusulong ng kagawaran ng edukasyon.
Around 73% of public schools have resumed face-to-face classes. News overseas now, U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden visiting a grieving community for the second time in almost 2 weeks. Just 12 days ago, the Bidens were in the city of Buffalo in New York. This time, the two met with the victims' families in the U.S. state of Texas, where 21 people were brutally murdered by a gunman in an elementary school. CNN's Cole Higgins reports.
President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden arriving in Uvalde, Texas Sunday. First visiting Robb Elementary School, laying flowers at the memorial. Biden acting as consoler-in-chief, embracing the school's principal, before walking along the row of memorial wreaths from picture to picture of each of the 19 children and 2 teachers, 21 people in total who were gunned down inside the school. Texas Governor Greg Abbott also stopping by the memorial, an onlooker issuing a plea.
I hope that some politicians see this and try to meet in the middle and work together.
The Bidens attending Mass as they do nearly every Sunday, but this time with the grieving parishioners of Uvalde's Sacred Heart Catholic Church. President Biden facing calls to action and chants of do something while leading Mass.
You could tell he wasn't there for a photo op, he wasn't there for none of that. He was there for the people who were actually, the victims, the families.
The Bidens spending about 3 hours meeting privately with survivors and victims' families at the Uvalde County Arena.
It was really just all about my daughter. They were very gracious, they showed compassion, and that's all we were here for. You know what I'm saying? He listened to everything, and we listened to him. He shed some tears, we shed some tears.
I'm Cole Higgins reporting.
The U.S. Justice Department said it is conducting a review of law enforcement response during the mass shooting. Sports and entertainment stories coming up. The Celtics are headed to the NBA Finals for the first time in 12 years, while the Cannes Film Festival has said critical film brings home the Palme d'Or, including a Filipino actress. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
RPN DXKT 1071 sa dial sa inyong mga radyo.
You're watching CNN Philippines. Get ready for a Celtics versus Warriors showdown in the NBA Finals. The Boston Celtics won the Eastern Conference Finals, defeating the Miami Heat in Game 7, 100-96. This is the first time in 12 years that Boston will enter the championship round. The Celtics' top scorer of the night, Jason Tatum, was named first Larry Bird East Conference Finals MVP. The best-of-7 final series between Golden State and Boston begins Friday, 9 a.m. Philippine time. Well, for the first time in 2 years, the PBA is back in full swing with the return of the three-conference format. Season 47 opens with a doubleheader this June 5th at the Araneta Coliseum for the All-Filipino Conference. At 4:30 p.m., the Converge Fiber Xers will debut in the league, playing against the Rain or Shine Elasto Painters. At 6:30, Magnolia faces defending Philippine Cup champions TNT. Health and safety protocols will be observed, with Metro Manila still under Alert Level 1.
Dahan-dahan namin nakipagtulungan po kami sa IATF at sa ating medical experts kung pwede nang dahan-dahan tanggalin na yung antigen. Pero as of now, antigen every game day, ang mga teams, ang staff, ang mga referees, ganun din.
The biggest priority is to get back to normal. And the only way we will get back to normal is to have 3 conferences. So balik tayo doon sa pinanggalingan natin.
Before the games, the league will hand out honors to last season's top players in the 46th Leo Awards. Filipino-Canadian tennis star Leylah Fernandez earns a spot in the French Open quarterfinals. For the first time, Fernandez defeated Amanda Anisimova of the U.S. in 3 sets, 6-3, 4-6, and 6-3. The 19-year-old will face Italy's Martina Trevisan in the next round, slated for tomorrow, Philippine time. Stephen Schrock of the Philippine Ascals will not be part of the action in the final round of the 2023 AFC Asian Cup qualifiers. Head coach Thomas Dooley told CNN Philippine Sports Desk the decision was based on Schrock's performance. Dooley also denied having personal issues with the veteran national team standout who began playing as captain in 2019.
In football Pacific Fitness, he's maybe the best player in here in the Philippines.
Yes.
Coach, that doesn't mean, you know, you do the right thing on the field.
Yeah.
And with all that stuff, so I make a decision what's best for my team. When he wasn't there with the team, we had the biggest success and we played beautiful football.
The final round matches tip off on June 8th. The Ascals were drawn with Yemen, Mongolia, and Palestine in Group B. Heading to France, the Cannes Film Festival has recognized much Pinoy talent this year. Filipino actress Dolly De Leon plays Abigail in The Triangle of Sadness. It won the Palme d'Or, which is given to the best film in the competition. The movie sees the super rich come together in a luxurious yacht and get stranded on an island. Dolly spoke about her character on CNN Philippines New Day last week.
It takes a turn when, you know, the power of these people have is lost when they get stranded on an island because they don't know how to survive. Abigail, the character I play, she's the one who is very resourceful, self-sufficient, and she finds ways to help everybody survive. And because of that, they look up to her, they follow her, and she takes the lead, and she's the boss.
Plan 75, a film co-produced by the Philippines, France, and Japan, earned the Camera d'Or or Golden Camera Special Mention of the festival. Two of the movie's producers and one of its actors are Filipinos. A co-producer spoke to CNN Philippines about the inclusion of a Pinoy character in the film.
I guess anywhere in the world there will be a Filipino caregiver, you know. So I guess the idea didn't come from me, to be honest. It was already written into the project, and then that's why they asked me to help them realize the role of Maria, to fix the role of Maria, to help share research a little bit about the migrant workers and the caregivers in Tokyo.
Plan 75 is the feature directorial debut of Japanese filmmaker Chi Hayakawa. An iconic action star made his biggest U.S. box office opening with a much-awaited sequel. CNN's David Daniel tells us the top 5 films last weekend.
Being good just feels so good.
The Bad Guys stayed in the top 5, making off with $4.6 million. Downton Abbey: A New Era fell to 4th on ticket sales of $5.9 million.
I'm making an instrument out of spoons and a napkin holder and dreams and magic.
The Bob's Burgers movie began its run by cooking up $15 million for a third-place debut. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness fell to 2nd with $16.4 million for a domestic total of $375 million, the most of any film released in 2022 so far.
Your instructor is one of the finest pilots this program has ever produced.
Tom Cruise and Top Gun Maverick had all the right moves. The long-awaited sequel zoomed off with $124 million in its first 3 days. Record debuts for Cruise and for Memorial Day weekend. In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
RPN DXKT 1071 sa dial sa inyong mga radyo.